Hello, my name is Gio, and let's talk about monopsony. Now, I will ask the most obvious question to start a unit. What is monopsony? Our textbook says it's a market in which there is only a single buyer of a good, service, or resource. Well, let me rephrase it. It's a market with one buyer, one person who pays for it. Well, I feel like we are already familiar to something similar to that. The word one sounds like something close to a monopoly. Well, let's talk about it. Monopoly and monopsony are very similar in a certain way, but they're also the complete opposite of each other and the other way around. And the biggest difference comes from who the seller and the buyer is. In a monopolistic market, we have one seller, which is the firm, and we have regular people as the consumers. They pay for it. This firm sells a product which they only have, which is monopoly, like Microsoft Office Word, to the consumers in the market. However, in a monopsonistic market, it works in the opposite way. They're in an inverse relationship. In this case, we have people as the sellers, and we have the single buyer, who is a firm. These sellers compete each other to sell what they have, and in this case, I call it the manpower. The sellers sell their physical or intellectual human power to this sole buyer. Now let's look at how it actually works. We'll start with the typical X and Y axes, which are in this case quantity labor and wage H. So this pink line refers to the supply of labor or the number of people to work. And we also have the yellow line, which is the amount of money the firm has to spend for hiring those people, the marginal fixed cost. This line has a slope that is much steeper than the pink line because when we graph the amount of money that goes in as the wage, we have to multiply the number of people by the amount of money they will receive, which will make the graph slope increase at the rate of the price. Then now let's talk about what the firm earns. It is represented by the light blue line, which is the MRP, or the marginal revenue product. And as all firms would, the premise of their business is to earn money, so their job of hiring new workers should also happen in the most efficient and profit-making way. So I guess no firm will take a bold step to hire people to the point where they have to pay them more than the amount they earn. And in simpler words, the MFC should not exceed the MRP. This point is exactly where the number of people to get hired gets decided. So let's draw a line down from that point so that it touches the Q labor axis. And that is the number of people to hire. Then how much should we pay them? The SL curve reflects the amount of wage for each unit of worker. So when SL is at Q1, the number of people to get hired, the Y value is W1, and that is how much the workers have to get paid. Then let's move to the right side and just take a look at some additional important information. So basically, this graph demonstrates the market competition for labor. So the product becomes labor, and it is competition for selling their labor. And when the amount of worker increases, the amount of wage paid also increases too, and it's reflected by the SL graph. As I explained, the MFC increases at a faster rate than the SL due to the multiplication of the actual amount of money paid by the number of workers. And to conclude, the firm will never ever hire anyone past the point Q1. Now let's move on to something a bit more advanced. We will talk about the minimum wage and even more how it impacts the society. So we will keep the basic forms and the lines from the previous page. And now let's suppose the government has put a minimum wage above the original wage. And as we can all tell, it is the exact same as what the price floor is. As soon as the minimum wage line appears, we get a new SL curve. It goes all the way until where the two lines intersect. After that, it increases because no worker would want to get paid less than they would have if there wasn't the minimum wage. So the green line becomes our new SL graph, the straight line, and then the increasing line. And when SL is at W2, it is at Q2 for the x-axis. So Q2 becomes the amount of workers we can hire. And not only that, the minimum wage also establishes a new MFC graph as well. It is actually pretty obvious because MFC is basically SL times the price of wage per person. So the green line here becomes our new MFC graph. just like the SL graph. Having a minimum wage is a very significant and influential government action because it affects not only the amount of workers to get hired and the wage, but the society in terms of unemployment and quality of life. In the short run, the firm gets to spend more money. They might think it's a loss because they have to pay more money, which is the settled amount for the number of people who will work at a lower wage if we didn't have that at all. You could have hired more people with the same amount. However, in the long run, after the graph exceeds the point where MFC and the MRP line intersects, the firm is able to hire even more people with the same amount of money because they don't have to raise the amount they're paying. We have the green line. So in the long run, it allows the firm to pay less and also allows more people to get a job at the same company. It definitely affects the unemployment rate and allows more people to enjoy a better life by making a living out of it. Then let's make it easier. I'll combine it with the example I showed you earlier. So let's bring back these tiny guys. When we look at the red line, which is before the minimum wage existed, the firm is only able to hire up to 2 people. Any number past 2 becomes unaffordable for the firm because it's greater than the amount of revenue they make, the MRP. However, if there is the minimum wage line, the green line, the firm can handle up to 4 because until that point, the amount of money the firm has to pay remains the same, which lessens the burden of the firm that they have to spend more money if they hire more people. Now let's go to the practice question. We have 2 practice questions, and the first one is, consider 2 characteristics of a monopsony labor market. The number of firms hiring and firms hiring incentives. Which of the following is correct? Just pause, take time, and solve it. The answer is D, a single firm hiring labor that must adjust the wage it pays. It's true because in a monopsony market, we have one firm that hires or consumes laborers, and the wage depends on where MRP and MFC intersects. And number 2, what happens as a result of the minimum wage? Also, pause, take time, solve it. And the answer is A, the employment increases. Why? Because if we have a settled amount of wage that can be paid, the firm doesn't have the burden that we have to raise because there's already a settled amount, and it allows them to employ more people. Thank you for watching. I hope this helped all of you who are watching this for your test and assignments, and I'll come back later with a new unit. Thank you.